When Quakers are asked what they believe, we're at a disadvantage. We don't have the Book of Common Prayer. We don't have the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed to cite. We're non-creedal folk, but we have beliefs, we have traditions. And the default setting for many friends, many Quakers these days are the spices. It's an acronym for what friends call the testimonies.
So sort of the way that I see it is a Quaker testimony is my reality, my experience of God that I want to share with you because I've lived it, I've breathed it. This has been my thing. When we talk about Quaker testimonies, we tend to think of a list of expressions of that we as Quakers have historically held.
The spices, as an acronym, represent, and there are different interpretations, but the standard are simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. Simplicity comes out of the ancient Quaker tradition of plainness, focusing on what's most important. Remove the excess from your life that detracts you from what's most important spiritually in your life.
In what we call Friends Peace Testimony now, Fox talks about living in that life and power that takes away the occasion for all wars. And I think that life and power part is the soil that we need to nurture to be in that life and power that takes away the occasion for all sorts of violence and helps us move out of the comfort of the institutions we've built and into some new space.
Integrity. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be honest in all your dealings, but more importantly, be authentic. Practice harmonizing your life with your principles. Integrate what you say you believe and how you live your daily life. Let your life speak.
Moving on to community. Community is the way we learn to live better lives, the community of the friends meeting, and that together we find the truth more adequately than we can as individuals.
Equality is important because friends have always experienced that there's that light and life and saving power of God within each individual. So all people are radically equal as children of God because each has that light of God within them, that access to truth.
And then the beauty of spices, I think, is that the first thing and the last thing are intimately related. As we simplify our lives, we're helping ourselves live more sustainably, but we're also living more simply on the earth, and we're helping move towards a society more in balance with the natural world or God's creation. And that is the really big challenge, the final horizon within which I think we're living our faith and practice today is towards a more sustainable world.
The concern about the spices for some Quakers is that, like a creed or like statements of faith like the Apostles' Creed or Nicene Creed, it can become a shorthand that is unreflective, that is simply repeated. But what do you believe? Well, we believe in the spices. But you don't really know why.
There's the danger that we both separate different aspects of our testimony from itself, but also that they become kind of optional add-ons, or, I can say, well, I'm really into peace, but I struggle with simplicity, or I'm really into simplicity, but I struggle with peace. And so we're in danger, I think, of losing that connection between spiritual experience and our witness.
And if we take someone else's testimony and just proclaim it, we have taken out the life of it. We've taken out what made it exist in the first place, because all of those testimonies that we hold came because of this living relationship with God, living out within a person and a community. And if we try to sort of, I think of it kind of like branches of a tree. If the testimony of peace or the testimony of simplicity is a branch on the tree, you can't just break it off and hand it to someone. You have to also give them the whole tree, which is a direct encounter with God that brings all of these things out to be expressed in this real and living way.
I think Quaker faith and practice, the deeper you go with it over time, the more you realize it's not just lists of things like spices and different aspects of Quaker faith and practice, but it's all one whole life. And it's a sustainable life that brings a lot of joy and wisdom over time.
There's nothing I can really add to that Quaker Speak video. You know, when I see that, it reminds me of when I first came to Friends. Like so many friends, I was attracted by one of the spices. For me, it was simplicity. And I was living a very complicated and chaotic life with 2 small children and a big old falling down house. I mean, it was just everything. Life was closing in on me, and I loved the idea of simplicity. And I would go to meeting and I would come back and I would resolve to live a more simple life. And I would sort of imagine myself in this more simple life. And I would try to do things, you know, get rid of stuff. And somehow I never succeeded. And after I'd been coming to Goose Creek for a couple of years, I went to a Friends General Conference gathering and I took a workshop on the testimonies and on testimony. And I sometimes think I'm a remarkably slow learner, because it became clear to me in that the man who led the workshop essentially said what was said on that Quaker Speak video, that it is an inside out process. I think there's a great quote in one of Paul's epistles, you know, you put on the mind of Christ. The testimonies are an outcome of your inner transformation. And you can't squeeze yourself into them, because as if you were squeezing yourself into a suit of clothes that doesn't quite fit. And, you know, it was like a revelation to me. And so now I can recognize how my Quaker practice has changed aspects of my life, including made my life and made me a simpler person. But it had to happen from the inside. It couldn't happen from the outside. And it's a very hard lesson to learn. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about your faith journeys. Not everybody here is a Quaker, but, you know, your faith journey, I'm sure Jim has informed your life. To hear how your faith journey has led to changes in your life, perhaps how you would like to see things go. I mean, we're in slow religion here in Quakerdom. It takes a long time for these things to happen. At least for me, it does. So, you know, there are no wrong answers. There's no progress report. There's no, I think I'm here now. But, you know, we're all on a journey that I hope that you'll share with us this evening. So that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Patricia. I just put the words in the chat. Modeling God's presence in our lives is more important than espousing beliefs. And I guess be an example is as simple and direct as it can get. So.
What's interesting is this was called the 9th core belief in Quakerism.
Yes. Yeah.
And what is so nice is I listened to you guys, I think the first 2 or 3 on YouTube, but then just in these 9, I have grown. So my core beliefs, you know, your core beliefs stay, but as you grow, your way of life in Quakerism changes. and in the traditional religious churches I went to, it fitted a box, you was not allowed to question. It's like you was not allowed to grow. You don't read this author, don't read that author, but so just even in 9 lessons, I can't believe how much things I thought I understood and what I thought I had. No, that wasn't it at all, and that is what's so amazing about Quakerism is the more you read and the more you time spend with other Quakers and just listening to other people and appreciating life, of how you just grow all the time. And when I quit growing, then I will no longer be a Quaker, I don't think. But I do appreciate you all so much. You have really, really helped me a lot in a small area where there is no Quakers. I have to go to Bloomington, which is like an hour and a half away. So you guys have really been a blessing.
He's in Minnesota.
That's great, Debbie.
Wonderful to hear. Mac?
Oh, I'm just muting ourselves here.
Why are you?
Did you say want to say something?
Yeah, did you want to say something?
No,
Mac and I've been involved since we were 23 and 24. We raised our children in Quaker meeting. We moved around a lot because of Mac's work. He's a research scientist, and there were lots of different projects he took on in his life. Especially after Bell Labs changed so drastically and sold off their operating companies. That's when the adventures really started. We were in New Jersey for a number of years because of Bell Laboratories. But the thing I discovered is that every meeting we attended was different. And some people really understood what it was about. There was one meeting that thought it was a free-for-all, which it isn't. But how to get a hold of people when they think it's a free-for-all is another issue. It takes a long time. They have to be open to listening to one another. If you were in Arizona, it was different from if you were in New Jersey, or if you were in Goose Creek or wherever you were. But I think the intention was the same. I think the intention was a belief that there was really something in each of us that was searching for this very thing that we're talking about tonight. And that community was important. And listening to one another and not judging, I think, is one of the crucial aspects of Friends meetings. Another thing that comes to mind is what Jesus said: love one another as I have loved you, which is unconditionally. And practicing loving one another unconditionally is a challenging and beautiful thing. It can be frustrating sometimes. But I think that's at the core, is loving one another and giving to each other room to grow, and realizing that everybody's path is unique.
Well, I'm not one to beg off on this question. I think spiritual formation has been happening all through my life. And I think the tragedies and the suffering that we run into sometimes, and other people's sufferings, takes us into darker places where we really do need to look for the light in the hope of it all. And I wasn't real serious about religion until I was a church school teacher in the Methodist Church, and one of my students completed suicide.
Mm.
And that her death changed my life forever, because I took seriously what is spiritual and what is not. And I came out of that experience with a lot of mixed feelings and a lot of confusion. And it was years later that I understood that her father was the one that was the culprit in the whole thing. Through my call to ministry and deciding to go into ministry happened in another event when I slammed a student up against a wall because they weren't listening to me, the student teacher. And I became to realize the power that I had, and not just spiritual power, but physical power, and that I could literally hurt a kid. And this boy's name was John, and he didn't listen. He ran up the street in the middle of the street, and was kind of an acting out kid. And I thought then, I'm not sure I'm going to be a teacher here. And I decided not to be a teacher. And it was not too many years later, I found out that John had been shot. They were supposedly cleaning a gun, pistol. And he was a 5th grader or 6th grader when I knew him. So he'd have been in 7th or 8th grade. And then I thought about, wow, I had a relationship with this boy, and I slammed him up against a wall. And today, if I do that, you'd be up before a court. So that was another tragedy. And then I made decisions to go into ministry, and in my call, another tragedy, train car accident, which my brother and mother were, in a car, hit by a train, driven down the track several hundreds of yards. And I was in a parish at the time and decided in the intensive care of the hospital with encephalitis that perhaps I need to renegotiate my contract with God. And then in the parish in my early years, there was a Sunday school superintendent that took his life. And I'm beginning to think, God, I'm surrounded by people taking their lives. And then later, my best friend took his life. And not too many years ago, my son almost took his life. So these tragedies, these dark times that come to me through other people, take you on into some real dark places yourself. And in those dark places, in that suffering that you go through and wandering in the wilderness and the desert, I think that you find a light that's more permanent and more bright than you've ever really thought. And so my life turned. I decided to become a chaplain supervisor and teacher, and did a couple years residency at Geisinger Medical Center, and that was a whole different career, one which I miss and one which I loved. But I think spirituality goes through transitions, through transformations, and you go through periods of, like the one poem said, the road gets washed out, and you got to find another way around it. And you do find another way around it. And then you find out that in finding the way around it, you've learned something more about life. So I think I don't have any quick answers to all that. I just think that the pathways that we're all on lead us all in different directions, but all to the same place, if we're true to our call. So I don't care if I'm a Quaker or a Methodist or a Catholic or a Jew or Imam. I think those are just descriptors, just words that point somewhere. And I think that through it all, every human being has a spirit and a soul that have the responsibility to nurture and care for that spirit and soul as best they can. And I think we make it too complex sometimes. And that's all I have to say about that for now.
Thank you, Jim.
Jen.
When I came to faith late in life, my dad was a scientist, a researcher at NIH, double PhD at Stanford. He could talk 6 miles over my head. But he also was just not, faith was just, his faith was science. Growing up, I can remember it's probably less than a half a dozen times total being dragged either Easter or Christmas service. My mother took me to the Presbyterian church, and it was just a place I had to wear uncomfortable clothes and sit and be quiet. My first marriage fell apart. I found faith in the Lutheran church. And I found it through a relationship with the local pastor who reached out to me for for what I saw, no reason at all, but he did. And I got very heavily involved in that, but very quickly the dogma I really appreciated the community. I appreciated the pastor. I appreciated all of that, except the dogma, the box, the even to learn that we were part of the ELCA, but if you went to the Lutheran Church in the Missouri Synod, well, you couldn't take communion because they saw you as not worthy somehow, unless you converted. And that was part of the slippery slope I went down. But what? Wait a minute. When Lisa, my lovely bride, and I were getting together, she talked about unity. And at a unity church, there was this, it's the light of God. And after 20 some years at Unity of Fairfax, the commute got tough. And I met this fellow at a weekly meditation group, this guy named Chuck Hedges. I don't know. He had talked about Quaker meeting. Well, Lisa had some friends who were always in Quaker meeting as well, lowercase and uppercase friends. And what I keep coming back for is I truly have seen that the spiritual path is between you and the great mother, the universe, God, whatever you want to call that. And what I really appreciate is the openness and the equality. It's that we're all on this spiritual path, and there are stories, there are things you can lean on. I have appreciated the Bible more coming to Quaker meeting than I ever have, because the stories, and Patricia, I nod to you, as you've brought things up and explained and walked through them, I've seen them in a whole new light. I got the Bible shoved down my throat, and I turned off from it quite a bit. I'd only turn to, you give me the red words in the Bible, I'm okay with it. All the rest of it, throw it away. And your interpretations, your discussions of it have really helped me a lot, have opened me up to that. So what I appreciate and what Quaker lifestyle to me, or no, it's not a lifestyle, the Quaker way is respect for everybody's path that they are on, because it's their path. And I don't need to be in a box. I don't need someone to tell me what to believe, how to believe. But I will listen to how people are getting through this messy thing we call life. And the spiritual path makes that better. To me, Quakers, even to the point of coming to not consensus, coming to agreement, coming to, what's the term?
Coming to unity.
Coming to, I have, when I first heard about the 7 years for the air conditioning, I nearly blew a gasket. But I have come around to truly appreciate that and appreciate that process, that we're not going to try and force consensus. We're not going to take a nose count. We're going to see, what the feeling in the room is. And I really, really appreciate that. So that's kind of where I've come from.
Thank you, Dave. Wow.
Well,
Yeah,
I've said a version of this before, but I grew up in a family that we didn't go to church. And my impression of churches, from a little bit of experience I had with them growing up and in high school, was that if you're just talking into or listening to a minister, it isn't really your church; it's the minister's. But when Nancy and I first we were trying out different churches to see what we liked, and we tried the Quaker meeting in Cambridge. I've mentioned this before, and to me, it was just like coming home. It was amazing. Here was a church that didn't belong to the pastor; it belonged to the people. And that's haven't I changed my feeling about that, and so just wanted to share that.
Matt. I like that picture.
Well, I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and the authority was king, and you didn't question anything. And I had not some good experiences, so but I didn't want to leave the church, and I became the senior warden of the second largest church in the Diocese of Maryland. And the senior warden is, I guess, the priest. I don't know. And we had this one priest, and I said, you're really an ass. And he says, I've been a priest for 27 years and no one has ever told me that. I said, well, you don't think you've been hiding behind that collar for 27 years? So anyway, I know that's hard to believe that I would do that, but and so this ended in a divorce. He actually left the church, not because of that, because of some of his other machinations, and I ended up at Goose Creek meeting, and we were looking my wife and I were looking for somebody in the burying ground, and Bill comes out with his clipboard, and the person wasn't there. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to the meeting. And I was astounded at my first meeting. People were queuing up to take books out of the library. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. And as I evolved in the Quaker community, the freedom of, as I often say, peeling back the onion yourself, doing the research and not taking for granted what you have been told, for me has been absolute freedom. It has been absolute freedom. And to question and to say, oh, aha. And, I learned things about the Big Bang that I never knew. And it's just fascinating and changes the perspective. And I am grateful to be on this journey. And as Jim said, it is a journey. It's given me a lot, and it's freed me up to give to others.
Thank you, Chuck.
Lisa, can you tell us about your path? I've tried to get you to be a speaker several times because I'm so interested in the life that you and Charlie have made for yourselves, but you've always been off at the Adirondacks or some other place. So I would love you to share a little bit about your life, which is, to me, is really speaks to what we're talking about today.
Example, yeah.
Hate to put you on the spot, but I will.
You have really put me on the spot. And fundamentally, I'm an introvert. So I'm comfortable talking about some things, like rock, like I did earlier today. I guess what propels me, I don't know how to be articulate about this, but now that I've retired, I spent a good chunk of my working years for good causes, sustainability, energy efficiency, volunteer centers, and since I've retired, I can't remember. I don't know how, I can't remember this. I'm not being articulate. I'm sorry, but it just, for me, I push myself a little bit to take things on that maybe I would rather not. But I do it because of something fundamentally spiritual inside me that says, something like, if not you, then who, right? I mean, and so, I guess it's a little bit about integrity. Like, one of the things when I first got involved with promoting energy efficiency, and was looking at obstacles to what prevented people from taking action. And one of them early on that I sort of came up with was, well, I think like an environmentalist, therefore I am, which is it's kind of like the lifestyle, not really the lifestyle, but it described the inaction in our own household. It's like, oh, we're green, we think green, but were we really doing anything in our household? And that propelled me in the sense of, truth and integrity. It's like, if you don't walk the talk. So I think, doing everything we really possibly can in our own home, and then the work that I've done in the county and I continue to do in the county through my volunteer work, is about, I guess it's mostly about kind of spiritual integrity and there's a word I'm looking for, consistency, being consistent. So that's all I'll say. Sorry, it was kind of rambly.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie and Lisa have really adopted all kinds of measures to make their home incredibly energy efficient, and they live in an old home, right?
They're 1850, yeah.
Yeah, and to so conduct their lives to really make a difference in terms of battling climate change. I mean, is that overarching kind of what, is that correct, Lisa, Charlie?
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
We should do better than we do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot each of us can do. And yeah, so there's never an end to what you can do, and the collective impact can be quite remarkable. So just want to be, again, consistent with our beliefs.
Yeah. When I first came to Quakerism, I heard about the spices and I heard about integrity, and I thought about it in a very superficial way. I kind of thought about, yes, don't tell any lies, don't cheat on your taxes, that sort of thing. But as I have continued on this path, I realized that basically, and Lisa mentioned this word, spiritual integrity, is integrity is at the basis of all the other spices, is that your life should reflect, your outside should reflect your inside. And that to me is, it is, as an integrated person, my life integrated with my spiritual path. And so my understanding now of integrity is so much deeper than it was when I first, heard the word. And I try to bring that integrity. For example, I give vocal ministry fairly frequently at Goose Creek, but I feel it's very important, if I'm going to do that I, during the week, have a spiritual practice, that I follow the query, do you come to meeting with heart and mind prepared? And so to me, that's a kind of reflection of integrity, is that it reminds me a little bit, this is slightly lighthearted. A friend of mine who was a yoga teacher, and she said she has to practice yoga every day to really have an integrity in her practice. And it's and that's sort of what I try to bring to what I do for Goose Creek, but with varying levels of success, to the rest of my life, and trying to bring it all together. Religion, the word religion comes from the basis of that word is to tie things together, to bring things together, to bind things together. And so that to me is what religion is to bind together my inward experience with my outward action, and to bind together the wounds of the world, to bind together, to bring together people, and just on a sort of universal cosmic scale, to bind things together. And you know, it's a struggle. I hold myself to a very high standard because that's my nature, and so a lot of the time I feel like I'm failing, because I also kind of want there to be, I want to get a gold star sometime. That's what I want. I want a gold star. and I, even though my adult rational brain realizes how infantile that is, but of late, I find that where I'm being led is to be more forgiving towards myself. That it's a kind of narcissism to be constantly, pushing, and then belaboring, flogging yourself for not doing well at this or not doing that. It's a kind of weird little narcissism. So, so the path that continues, and it can be kind of rocky, but the idea that one comes to Quakerism, or I think any sincere faith journey, with the idea that here you're going to find serenity, is a complete and utter misconception, because you will certainly have that at times, but you will also be, I think, taken on a pretty exacting and interesting journey. And, faith is stepping off that cliff to say, okay, I'm willing to do this. This is what I'm going to do. And I will take the consequences of that, good and bad. So, I feel excited and interested from that viewpoint, because the day will never come when I will get that gold star, when I'll be told, okay, now you've got it all. And isn't that fantastic? Isn't that just fantastic? Because I can see myself at 85 or 90, hopefully you're still with us, still learning, and still feeling that I need to live my life with integrity. And I kind of hope that when the moment comes that I leave this life, that I do it with integrity as well. So.
No, as I heard.
Yeah, I'll just say, I didn't come tonight prepared to say anything, but I really want to thank everybody for sharing. And I felt very welcomed at Goose Creek. And also a sense of not really knowing where people are coming from. Though I know a little bit more now about where you are coming from. I like what I heard from a number of people about, it's about each of our own journey with God, or as we conceive of whatever the higher power is. And it's not about dogma for me at all. I was raised for 18 years of perfect attendance at Protestant Sunday school and blah, blah, blah. And I can no longer subscribe to the dogma of Christianity, although a lot of good feelings about my experiences. For the most part, it's not there for me. It's very much a personal journey and a personal commitment. And I really value, the silent worship and the sharing that happens. Yeah. So anyhow, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess.
Me too.
Been a Quaker for 33 years now, in 4 different meetings. My background, I didn't come from a very religious family, although the 2 people who were religious, my Aunt Hannah was a Quaker, and my grandmother, my mother's mother, was an Episcopalian. So I was brought up in the Episcopal Church for a period of time. I went to Friends Central, which is a Quaker school outside of Philadelphia. And one of the strangest and most wonderful experiences, and this is what, 10-year-old, sitting in a meeting for an hour, just feeling the silence. And that spoke a lot to me. I then went to a Episcopal high school where I graduated from, and didn't really get back to religion until we were in State College, where I became convinced, a very convinced friend. And I'm not really verbose. I kind of think about Mark Twain when he wrote a super long letter to his friends. He said, "I'm sorry this is so long, but I didn't have time enough to make it short." What has struck me, it struck me in the State College meeting. It did not strike me as much in some of the meetings in the Deep South. There was lots of division. And the last meeting I was involved with didn't really consider themselves a meeting. They said they were a silent meditation group. And it didn't hold me. Besides that, no one spoke. I guess I was there for 4 years, and 3 years. And I might have been the only person who ever spoke in that. So that didn't fit. Coming back here, though, I was pleased to see that we were close to Goose Creek meeting. I was familiar with them within my interactions in the Baltimore yearly meeting through State College meeting. And the thing that I experienced in the State College meeting, and I also experience in the Friends meeting, is a profound sense of wholeness when the meeting is gathered. I don't have great words for it. So the idea of spice is nice. It gives an outline. But for me, just that profound presence of God with others is what keeps me in a meeting and will keep me coming back until I pass away.
Wow. Thank you. You speak my mind. I've been trying to put some words to the leadings that I surprised myself with, and I generally don't speak until I know what I'm going to say. So this is total faith on my part. I am a Quaker because that of God exists in every living thing. And it's that tenet, which was my truth, my integrity, long before I had an opportunity to participate in Quaker meeting at Goose Creek. And I had not been to a Quaker meeting, even though Huffs are Quakers since William Penn. I had not been to a Quaker meeting in my life until 9 or 10 years ago. The moment I'm having right now, and it's based on a lot of reading and contemplation, I've always found it natural, organic, easy to worship. I grew up in a Methodist church, spent all of high school years taking my grandmother back and forth to Baptist church, and was very active in the Baptist youth and so forth, and went off to college and decided to argue for 4 years with my roommates about what was salvation or whatever the topic of church was required where I went to college. So, it was debate time, and to me it boiled down to semantics ultimately, and never really helped me grow at all. But I've always found God when I was introspective. And like Lisa, I'm an introvert. It's not easy for me to talk or present things in public, but it's always been easy to self-talk and to bring myself into an awareness of feeling loved and feeling God's presence. And what I believe will ultimately come true for me is that we can't be with God solely in ourselves. As Patricia said, it's an inward to outward journey. But where I am is at the threshold of outward. And where I am is, I am not totally Quaker. I am not totally the best. No, I don't like that word. I'm not totally in touch with God and God's Spirit unless I can look at each of you and I can feel not only equal to each of you, but feel connected to each of you and feel comfortable saying, I love you. And in Chuck Huff's life, I've always wondered how adults could say, I love you to each other, because it was all screwed up with romance and you know, inappropriate inferences to the word love. But tonight, I can actually say, and I don't even like this term biblically, I can actually say, I love you, and I feel connected to you in a way that makes me a better Quaker and makes me a more real person than the whole 9 steps. And every night I've been here, I've grown, but I feel so blessed that I had this opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to tell Patricia that every time you share in meeting, you get a gold star from me.
Well said.
Amen. Amen.
Well, thank you. I hate to disappoint you, but not everybody feels the same.
It doesn't matter.
I'm okay with that.
Well, it's been just these 9 gatherings we've had around these 9 core beliefs, Quaker beliefs, or I even hesitate to use the word belief, since we say, you know, beliefs are not, beliefs don't matter, but I think you know what we're talking about here. I have learned a great deal, and it's been a kind of refreshing revisit for me for some things, and it's kind of brought me to a place of recommitment, I think, to the Quaker way. It's kind of easy to get onto autopilot sometimes. You know, you sort of just drift along and you feel kind of, you know, you get a meeting and you got committee work, and you have your little, you know, you have the folks you talk to a lot, and then you have the folks you should talk to more, but somehow they're sitting on the other side of the meeting house, so you never quite make it over that far. You know, just the whole thing of just being comfortable in Quaker meeting. And usually what happens then is something happens to disrupt me, or an opportunity comes, or I'll meet somebody who will inspire me, or somebody will say something, or something like this happens where I'm called to do these Quaker sessions, and I'm reminded, you know, and I have times when I'm thinking, oh, I don't think I want to be a Quaker anymore. I think I'm going to try and find something that's more to my liking. And I look around and I think, I just don't see it. And I think, well, I'd really like to be that person. It must be so nice to be, you know, where you can go somewhere and you've paid somebody to do the preaching, and you can sit there and you can sing, and you can listen to the sermon, and you can, you know, bitch quietly to yourself if you don't like it, and then you can go home and you don't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. It would be so much more relaxing. But I know that I can't do that. And so, you know, for me, it's been a kind of recommitment to the Quaker way, wherever it may lead me. So I, you know, and I've met, and the thing I love too about Quakerism is some of the people that I've loved and have taught me most are people who come to meeting like Perry, who is not a Quaker, who will never become a Quaker, because he is very firmly an Episcopalian. But he was a deeply spiritual man who I think we all just completely and utterly benefited from knowing. So, you know, the door is open, and what we have is not limited to Quakerism. You know, you find people like that in every spiritual path. It's wonderful, and sometimes I think they kind of have to sort of escape from behind the rules or whatever their denomination is, but the heart is there, and they, you know, their path is in that particular denomination, or not even Christian. It could be Muslim, it could be Jewish, it could be, but you recognize you recognize that heart when you see it, and you feel gratitude for having met this person, because this person has taken you another few steps along the path. And I'm grateful for Quakerism for allowing that, for allowing me to explore beyond the realms of Quaker literature, vast though it is. For quiet people, we sure do write a lot. You know, I'm just very grateful. I'm just very grateful that I'm on this path, even when I'm really annoyed and just decided that to hell with it all. I'm going to stay home.
Wait. What was that last part about? You can pay somebody to go through this path for you? What?
Patricia, she is, there's the Clerk Friendship meeting house in Greensboro, North Carolina, the second and fourth Thursday of every month from 7:30 to 8:30. We're going through Deuteronomy. And I sent the email to Patricia for the link. So if anyone wants to join, it's like this. There's people from all over. Lloyd Lee Wilson is always in it, and I just love to listen to him.
Now, he really deserves a gold star, does Lloyd Lee?
Oh, amazing. A lot of them. Yes.
He is. I keep trying to participate. I will send out that link. And thank you for sending it to me. It's kind of I have not yet managed to do this, but it's a Bible study group, and at the moment you're studying Deuteronomy.
They said they have been 5 years on Deuteronomy.
Really?
Because
I'm not sure that's it.
Because
I'm not sure that's a good advertisement.
Because of all the laws they went through, you know.
Okay.
And, you know, you might do 3 or 4 verses, but then they got all these commentaries that they use, you know. Okay. So it's been really, really good. So we're just about to finish Deuteronomy, and they're going to start Matthew.
Okay. Maybe I'll come for Matthew.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. And it's just wonderful that Debbie found us on YouTube and joins us from Indiana. It's like one of the great blessings. Awesome. I mean, we did not advertise this at all because Chuck and I didn't have confidence. Weren't sure if we would be for prime time yet. So we just kept it in Goose Creek, but we were found. So that's great. Thank you, Debbie. I will send out that link.
Yeah, that's great. I
would also like to recommend, if we're on the recommending part of this, there is a just coming to the end of season 1 of a new podcast called The Quaker, which is really excellent. It is in fact one of the founders and one of the people who's behind it and presenters is the fellow who started the Quaker Speak videos for Friends Journal. I feel slightly unfaithful because I'm recommending The Quaker over Quakers Today, which is what Friends Journal puts out. And I'm on the board I'm a trustee of Friends Journal. But I think actually between you, me, and the doorpost, I think The Quaker is actually better and more interesting.
Did you say the as in
The Quaker, THEE Quaker.
Oh, The Quaker.
The Quaker, yeah. And it's a mix of history and current friends of all varieties, not just liberal unprogrammed friends. They actually go into meeting houses and record ministry. It's just a really, really entertaining and interesting podcast. And I recommend Quakers Today as well. I mean, it's shorter and it's tied very much to Friends Journal, but it's still interesting. But Be Quaker is just really good. So I would like to recommend that. And then Pendle Hill also has a podcast called The Seed, which is like longer interviews, which I haven't listened to enough to really make a good judgment on. All food for the journey. We'll be thinking, I guess Ministry and Worship will be thinking about what we might do for next year. I think we're going to continue to do these like adult RE sessions at night via YouTube. So I mean, via Zoom. So if people have something they think would be a good, ongoing sessions to talk about, just let us know. I've got some ideas, but we still got a week, so it'll be a bit of discernment as to the way forward from this.
Yeah, please let us know what leadings you have.
Patricia, speaking of your gold star, I like gold stars too. And then I'm with Lisa and Chuck. Sometimes I can't quite articulate my thoughts, but I think of when I'm thinking of the gold star, I'm thinking when Christ said that he wants us to be like little children, that there's this kind of, I don't know, semi-dichotomy or whatever the word would be, between wanting the gold star and not even begin to think he doesn't like us.
Mm-hmm.
Just like our parents. Just like we all want to, and our children and grandchildren wanted to please us, but up to a certain age, it never even dawned on them that we didn't like them. And so I think I'm starting to conclude and enjoying more the last few years. That sense that I can still want to please him, but I don't doubt for a minute that he doesn't like me and love me. So there's, like I said, it's some kind of a strange dichotomy there, but I think it's similar to us and our children and the way we acted toward our parents up until a certain age. So when we got a little more tainted,
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Yeah. Just on that note, Joel, it's interesting you should bring that up because I have a long and shameful history of replaying the past at 3 a.m. And on I go, and stupid things I said to people who now are dead, yet it still bothers me. Just the whole mistakes I made in child rearing. I mean, out it goes, and not too coincidentally, I was an insomniac, and very recently it suddenly dawned on me that now I know what forgiveness and repentance are, because it suddenly realized how unhealthy that was, that I was doing that, and that I am loved, and that I am forgiven, and that I need to let this go. And it's actually changed. It's actually changed how I sleep at night. It's like extraordinary that having suddenly understood forgiveness, as opposed to constantly holding myself up to a standard or trying to replay the past, which is a really unhealthy thing. And it's extraordinary. And it's the child, and it's wanting to be up to snuff and wanting the gold star and then realizing that I don't need to try so hard.
Well, Patricia, if you ever miss that, just let me know, because I'll lend you my inner critic for a little while, and I'll get a good night's sleep. Oh.
I'm just sitting here thinking how wonderful it is to be in the second half of life. And We don't have to live by the rules like we did in the first half of life. In fact, now we're working on breaking some of them down, living beyond the walls. And it's fascinating to listen to everybody and to realize, that how much we lived in bondage in the first half of life and to find liberty in the second half. If only we could have blended that earlier into ourselves, what we might have been able to become a little differently. That doesn't matter because now we can be. And that's the wonderful thing about it. This has been a good discussion tonight. Wonderful listening to everybody's stories, and the power of community is there. We need to spend time alone. I mean, that's part of being a Christian. Christ spent a lot of time alone, and a lot of his battles spent alone. And we spend a lot of our time alone. I guess we spend more time in the dark than we do in the light. But then when we come together, we bring what we've done in the dark, in our work, together to community. And we share it with each other. That's our liturgy. And it makes everybody stronger. Your stories make me stronger. My story makes you stronger. And our community makes us strong. And it feeds each of us individually so that we go out next week and we do more stuff. And we're alone again. But we're fed by the community. But we're fed by more than that. I think we're fed by the presence of God with us. In so many ways, God is with us. So it's an interesting night. But as God reminded Ezekiel, they are a rebellious people. Yeah, they are a rebellious people. God reminds Ezekiel over and over again, tells him what to do to bring him out of the bondage. But then at the very end sentence, he says, but they are a rebellious people. And we are.
Now, Chuck, that feller can articulate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know about that. David says I read too much Bonhoeffer.
Oh, don't get him started. No, don't get him started.
Nancy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think that we are all at any age in our life, whether it's 1 or 3 or 10, or we're in a state of becoming. And that's what life is about. And realizing we make mistakes. At the time we make the mistakes, we're not intentionally making mistakes. We're doing what we have to do at that time for where we are at that time. And nobody ever comes into life full blown. And so we need to forgive ourselves and go forward and love one another and live with intention, even though sometimes our egos or whatever it is doesn't allow us to keep our intention, but we don't intentionally hurt anyone. We don't intentionally hurt our children as we're raising them. We're doing the best we can with the insight we have at the moment. And the only way we get insight is through living.
I used to tell my students that when they started a class, I said, I want to see your mistakes. I want to see where you screw up, because that's where you learn. If you come here and you know how to do it perfectly, you shouldn't even be here. Why would you be here? But if you do your case studies and you show me where you messed up, where you really failed, that's what I want to see. I want to see where you fail, because in failing, you learn. In failing, you learn. And we have too many kids today that haven't failed very well. And they wait till they're adults and fail, and then they might take 18 people with them.
I recently took up knitting, which, if you know me, is fairly hilarious thought. But for some, I won't say how I got into it, but I took up knitting, and I've just finished knitting a sock, and the number of mistakes I made, then I actually had to unpick the whole thing from the heel back up to the shin. I mean, mistake after mistake, and then at the end of it, I had to do sort of some, quick darning of holes because there were drop stitches. And my husband would come in and he would see me and I'd be muttering and swearing beneath my breast. And I discovered that undoing knitting, when you sort of just start, it's called frogging, because you're going rip it, rip it, rip it. But the reason I'm telling you this is that I have learned so much about knitting from my mistakes. And I've learned how to recover from my mistakes. It's been quite the little parable in my life, let me tell you. And I now have one sock. So I'm trying to imagine if I can hop through life, because I'm not sure I have the strength to do another one. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's real little parable of learning from your mistakes. And I've also learned I have terrible ADD, but that's by the by.
Yeah, I agree with learning from your mistakes. I have a little different slant on, the self-blame. I've had the teaching one time that the spiritual path is not a self-improvement project. I think that's more as a child, we think, well, it teaches us how to be good. We got the 10 Commandments, blah, blah, blah. So my spiritual journey is to be a better person. And, to some degree it is, but it's really get closer to God. And God loves us. It's not about he's going to love us more if we're a better person. So I think we lose, we miss that if we just worry about being perfect, which obviously isn't going to happen.
Very true.
So Debbie, you're such a little dog lover. I just have to show you our little dog, who's a very good Quaker. He absolutely knows when we do Quaker meeting on Zoom most of the time.
Look.
he gets right between us. He doesn't move a muscle. He doesn't speak. It's like he's just like he just knows.
He's a good little Quaker, isn't he?
He is a good little Quaker.
And so I asked Debbie to mute earlier because I could hear a dog making a noise. I thought it was her dog. Maybe it was your dog.
No, it was not my dog. I think it was Jim's
All right, okay.
I think it was Jim.
Yeah, it was. Sorry.
I just want to say this 9 months and these 9 classes or sessions have just been outstanding. And I sit back and I think about the world as it was when we started down this path. And now I think of the world as it is on this 9th session. And I think of the people eloquently discussed at the beginning of the session. And it's, I was against the Vietnam War, a lot of the invasions that we made and so forth. And I find myself in this turmoil of definitely not indifference, but trying to put all these pieces together. And so I just hope that we hold all of these people in the light as we go forth.
Amen.
You know, there's sometimes, Chuck, I think I could go crazy if I get too deep into that war. The pain and agony and blood and destruction, what one person can do to another person's body, to babies, to daughters, to mothers. I can't concentrate on it too much. I really can't. And I feel so damn helpless with it. And I think we have I don't think we're the only ones that feel that way. I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. Feel so helpless in these times. I'm not sure what the spiritual pathway through that is. That was a question that came up in our group today. We didn't spend much time on it. I don't think we wanted to. But I think it's something that we need to do more than just contemplate about it. We need really to meditate on it somehow.
I saw there is actually a Quaker Speak video by Noah Merrill, who's actually now the General Secretary of New England Yearly Meeting, and he talks about the prophetic witness of Quakerism. And a phrase that he used, which has always stayed with me, is, we see the world as it is now, but we live into the world as we wish it to be. And sometimes I think, even though one feels helpless in the face of just the endless tragedy and happening in the world and beyond us, is that just keeping that thought, is that all I can do is live into the world as I would like it to be, which means to live in a world of love. So that's my I don't know, marching orders. That sounds a little militant. is to love and to understand that we're all to love those around me, whoever they are, and be open-hearted and generous.
Yeah, we have a war of an ideology against other ideologies, and how do you fight ideologies? And the one answer that I read that I think is a little bit important to it is you have to change the interior landscape of the person. And in order to change the interior landscape of the person, you've got to change the exterior landscape of the person. Once you change that, then you have an opportunity to get into the inner life. And I think there's truth in that. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is that the hateful people that come to me or that address me with their hate or talk about their hate, maybe the battlefield for me is right there. It is responding in some kindness, in some compassion, to hear that, to sit with it, and to somehow acknowledge it, but not to give in to it. And I think, I don't know how well I've been trained to do that. And maybe we need lessons in our religious circles and our meeting houses and churches to train each other how to become better responders to hatred. Because when hatred becomes human, it becomes a drama and just spreads like wildfire. Hatred spreads like wild. It's crazy. And it goes into these mobs that we're seeing and chaos. Maybe the battlefield's more here than we realize.
You know, one of the things I've done in the last few years is to become very curious about energy, because we're basically energy. That's what we are. And when we put out negative energy, the energy we put out never dies. That's what we put out in the world. And when we put out negative energy, we create more negative energy.
And likewise, if we put out positive, it's positive energy.
That's right. And I've studied Reiki healing. I've done a lot of things. And and I experienced a very profound thing at Pendle Hill. At Powell House, which is a Quaker retreat place in upstate New York, that our New Jersey meeting used to go to. The whole meeting would go. And one of the problems I have personally with being in groups is I pick up everybody's energy. That's been true since I was very little. My parents would go into San Francisco. It was during the Second World War. And I would see men sitting on the sidewalk with no legs selling pencils. And I'd be like 4 years old and I'd burst into tears. I couldn't stand to see. I'd think of what is their life like, and who did that to them, or how did that happen? So my parents would find this after a while and just take me clear away from anything that was like that. But when we went to a Halloween party, our whole meeting in New Jersey had a Halloween party and a weekend at Powell House. Everybody was wearing masks and doing all these crazy things. And I got this massive migraine. And I'm very sensitive to getting migraines. And I said to somebody who worked at Powell House, I said, I'm going to have to go upstairs because I have the most incredible migraine. And she said, don't do that. She said, go in the kitchen and then the cook will fix you. I thought, what? What is this about? So I went in the kitchen and I spoke to the cook. She was in there by herself. She said, yeah. She said, just go sit down in the chair over there. I don't know what she did, but she came behind me. She never touched me. But after a while, I felt this incredible warmth. And she was there for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And then it was over. I didn't have a migraine for 3 or 4 months. I went back to the party. And that has stuck with me. So I've been very, very interested in energy and realizing that we have a lot of negative energy in our country now because of who was our former leader. And people don't know how to discern the difference between intelligent information and information that is intended to stimulate your emotions. And so that kind of discernment is lacking in our culture right now. But I think back to when President Kennedy came in and he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, and created this incredible thing called the Peace Corps. And people were really excited about that. The energy was different because of his leadership. And in a sense, we're all, as individuals, we're leaders to be responsible about how we use our energy. I'm not really a great Reiki healer right now because I have to do a lot of other things. But when I do it, I feel better, and I think the people feel better that I do it for. Amy's has been a very good Reiki healer. She did that a lot when they went to Poland, helped the refugees from Ukraine, or they're called guests in Poland. They're called guests from Ukraine. I think we can do a lot with our positive energy, with our divine energy. And I think that lives inside of us. It comes from the divine. It is the divine. And when, I don't know if anybody saw the last National Geographic that came out about all the views that were seen from the Webb telescope, and how these new universes were being created and stars were being created, and we could see them for the first time. There's a lot we can't see, but creation is going on, and we are a part of it, and we can send out our loving energy, our caring energy, and make a difference. We could do that. And I see that in meeting. I see that potential in meeting. I see it in lots of people in meeting. It matters. It really matters, and we can't give up. When we see the horrible things, we cannot give up.
Thank you, Nancy. Any closing thoughts from anyone?
I just apologize for talking too much.
No worries at all. We had some queries. We clearly don't need queries. Patricia, did you have anything to close with?
No, just thank you everyone for participating and for supporting us in this endeavor. It's just been wonderful.
And thank you, Patricia. You're beautiful.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chuck. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank
Thank
all of
you,
you.
Chuck and Patricia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. God bless. Everybody have a good night, and we'll look for the next plan when he send us your ideas.